All right, IBAISL2. Today we're going to sort of build off those calculator skills we did last class with 1-var stats on our TI calculators, but we're going to introduce something new called standard deviation. Today we are going to work with 3 sets of data. You might recognize a couple of them from the video I did on 1-var stats. So with all 3 of these, we're going to find standard deviation. We're going to talk about it. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about something called the interquartile range, if there is time. So today we're going to talk about measures of dispersion. So the first measure of dispersion is called the range. And range is pretty simple. It's just the biggest number minus the smallest number. It's like the span of the data in terms of like a distance is how I think of it. The other big thing we're going to talk about is standard deviation. So standard deviation tells you how spread out the data is. Like if it's really, really spread out in relation to the mean, or if it's really, really close to the mean, like clustered. When it's small and clustered to a mean would be, somewhere in the middle here. That is a smaller standard deviation. Oh, the symbol for standard deviation is this guy right here. It's a Greek letter. It's like an O with a little fancy hat on it. I'm not very good at it. Please don't make fun of me. If you have a larger standard deviation, that means the data is more spread out around the mean being somewhere in the middle here. So that's a larger standard deviation. The book also wants you guys to find variance. Variance is very similar to the standard deviation. It really just tells you a little bit about spread as well. But the way you find it is that you take the standard deviation and you just square it. That's it. Just multiply the standard deviation with itself. So for this first data set A, we are going to find the standard deviation. Since this is just one string of data, it doesn't have frequency. This means we're going to go to, I'll write out the steps. We're going to hit the stat button if you're working on like a TI-84 or 83. And then after the stat button, you're going to hit edit. Then you're going to clear anything that's already in there. So then clear things. So really just clear L1 is the thing that we need to do. And then you're going to enter data in L1. So let's see, I got 146, 158, 151, excuse me. 58, 158, 161, 149, 160, 147, 158, 160, 216, 225, 238. Now, assuming I got those all punched in correctly, you're going to hit stat again, and then arrow over to calc, and then hit enter on one var stats is where you need to go after that. So, clear the frequency list if you had anything in there from before, because we're just working with L1, hit calculate, and then on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, you'll see this symbol right here. Row X is equal to 30.84. That is our standard deviation. That's a pretty high standard deviation. It's hard to say, like this number's high, this number's low, because it's all in relation to the data. But right now today I'm just focused on you guys being able to find it. So the standard deviation is this. So what that high number means is that the data points are not close to the mean. That the data is very spread out. Now we are going to find the standard deviation for part B. What you're going to do is those same steps that you did up here of stat, edit, clear the list, and then you're going to enter in L1, but you're going to enter scores into L1. And frequency in L2. So I'm going to hit stat, edit. I'm going to clear my L1 so I get the other data out of there. Then put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in that list. And then in L2, I'll put the frequencies. 21, 9, 8, 4, 7. I apologize that you guys can't see this. I'm not fancy enough to get like a dual camera rig here. Once you have the frequencies in L2, you're going to hit stat again, stat, calc, and then 1var stats again. But when you do 1var stats again, you have to make sure that L1 is the list, but then for freq list, we have to make sure that says L2. So the L2 button is above the 2 on your calculator. I showed that in my other video. Hit enter, hit calculate, and then you'll get the standard deviation is 2.8. Now, 2.8 compared to 30.84, 2.8 is a very low standard deviation. So, this would mean the points will be very close to the mean. It's not very spread out. The mean being the average. For the third set of data, data C, it's basically a frequency table, but notice that your scores are ranges. They're not solid numbers. So what you do is you take a midpoint of each one. So the midpoint between 2 and 3 is 2.5. The midpoint, I'll just use MP, of 3 and 4 is 3.5. And then the midpoint of 4 and 5 is 4.5. And then the midpoint here is 5.5. These are essentially going to be your X values, your scores. It's because we don't know what the actual scores are in those ranges. So we'll say, you know, our best approximation is to take the middle. So these numbers, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, that's what we're going to put into L1. Otherwise, it's the exact same process as this. It's just a regular frequency table, but you use midpoints instead of the actual scores. So I'm going to hit stat, edit. I'm going to clear L1 and L2 because I'm using brand new data. And then in L1, I'm going to put 2.5, then 3.5, then 4.5, then 5.5, then 6.5, then 7.5. In L2, we're going to put these guys, our frequencies. 5, 19, 17, 5, 3, and 1. Then stat, calc, 1var stats. List is pulling from L1. Frequency list is pulling from L2, so we're all good. Going to calculate. And then I get a even smaller, what are we talking about? Standard deviation, which is a hard 1.1. So 1.1 is a very small standard deviation. It's quite small, the book says. Quite, it's a British word. So that's most weights, these were weights of things. Most weights are very close to the mean. Now, if you're following along and you've got your calculator and you just ran 1var stats, you can see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, and like the bottom one says n equals 50 right now, which means there was 50 data points. But go ahead and hit the down arrow for me. Whoa, there's like a bunch more numbers. So using that same example, so from data C, scroll down on 1var stats. So you already ran 1var stats, you got your mean, your standard deviation, but scroll down, there's additional information. Let me show you what that info is. In this example, it says min x is equal to 2.5, q1 is equal to 3.5, med, what do you think that stands for? It's the median, and q3 is equal to 4.5 as well, and then the max x is equal to 7.5. So you guys, this is your smallest data point. This is your biggest data point. If I was going to find the range for this, I would subtract this number from this number. Now, these guys in between are called the quartiles. So this is called the lower quartile. And I think next video I'll explain a little bit more about what quartiles are, but in your homework you had to find them, so I want to make sure you could do it. This is called the upper quartile. Quartiles really just split the data into quarters. So it's like a quarter of the data comes before Q1, and then the next quarter happens at the median. This is the median. And then the, the upper, 3/4 is at Q3, and then, yeah, it splits it into all these quarter points. I'll show you in the next video a little bit better. Now, in your homework, they're going to ask you to find something called IQR. IQR stands for inner quartile range. The way you find it is you take Q3 and you subtract Q1. And you can do this pretty quick by doing 1var stats. Punching in all your whatever data you're using, use 1var stats, and then scroll down, and then you get this guy right here. Oh, there's a name for these 5 numbers. It's not a clever name. It's called the 5-number summary. So sometimes they'll say, find the 5-number summary, and they're looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me just glance at your homework and make sure that I think that's going to get you through on everything. If there's something that's not covered in here, we'll add it to next class. I just want to make sure this video wasn't too long for you guys. Okay, have a good day.